Hello, and thanks for joining me today as we continue our discussion on the kidneys and the nephrons, and we look at specifically the nephron and then urine production, how urine is produced. So here we go. Goals for you is to one, explain how blood flows through a kidney. Two, we want to describe the production of urine. So blood flow through a kidney, production of urine. We want to distinguish between the renal cortex and the renal medulla in terms of structures and functions. We've done a little bit of that previously. We'll talk a little more today. Then we're going to talk about glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion as being the three parts of urine production. So those are going to be our three main parts there. So first, the kidneys work because they're supplied by, blood is supplied by the renal artery, which is a direct branch up the abdominal aorta. Roughly between 20 and 25% of your cardiac output, your blood flow, goes to your kidneys. So they are a major player in keeping your blood safe for you and keeping it clean. So 20 to 25% of the blood pumped from your heart goes to your kidneys. It goes from that renal artery into smaller arteries, which then end up in this nephron unit. Blood leaves there via renal veins, and those renal veins will dump directly into the inferior vena cava to take it back to your heart to pump clean blood out to the rest of your body. Okay, so we talked about the cortex previously. This is the outer portion of the kidney. It produces those renal columns that go in between the pyramids. It's a hypotonic environment, meaning that water is pulled out of your blood vessels, pulled into your corpuscle, and filtered for urine. So water flows from filtrate into the cortex, and this is where tubular secretion and tubular reabsorption happen at. We'll look at these two pictures down here on the next couple slides. So this is your first part of urine production. This is your glomerular capsule. And so blood flows in this way, this way. We run it down to a single blood cell before it then leaves the body after all of the juices are pulled out of it. And then when that happens, so when it goes in here, this is what's happening. You have your red blood cells, your plasma proteins, your large anions. All of these are kept within your blood vessel, in your artery and your capillary. Okay, the things that pass through, primarily water. We have your electrolytes slide through these openings. Glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins. But water, electrolytes, glucose, and then urea, uric acid, and creatinine are your three big on either side. Three big things that get pulled from the blood and pulled into your capsular space, your glomerulus. Okay, that's all in the cortex. Then we have this renal medulla. Again, the inner portion of the kidney splits into the pyramids and functions to remove water. That's kind of the big thing that happens in your renal medulla is water gets pulled from the filtrate into this medulla, and then it can be put back into the filtrate as well if needed, depending on what your body is looking at as far as water content, water concentration. Okay, so here's a diagram which talks about showing you how things flow. And so because water is removed from this filtrate here, water is pulled out. That makes this salt pressure, the salt pressure in here, much higher. And because the salt content here is higher, when it turns the corner and goes back up, it's going to pull those salts out. They get pulled out because there's such a high concentration inside and a less concentration on the outside. So that pulls your salts back out, creating this very salty extracellular fluid. Okay, so your medulla is actually very high in salt concentrations. And so this is how it kind of keeps that. Is water is pulled out first, and then salt is pulled out because this is a very salty fluid after that. Looking specifically at urine formation. So this all takes place in your nephron. There's roughly 1 million nephrons in a kidney. The number cannot increase, so it doesn't change after birth. These doesn't go up. You can destroy them, which isn't good because then they can't replace themselves. So again, can't be replaced with damaged or ruined. But your kidneys filter 180 liters of blood / urine per day. That is a lot. So kidneys are very important to us. They keep our blood clean, kind of like an oil filter. They filter our blood out so it's not carrying around contaminants to the rest of our body. The two parts of this filtering process are called the tubular component, which is your renal tubules, and then your vascular component, which we're going to look at here. Okay, so this is the whole process. It comes into your glomerulus in this Bowman's capsule. It then goes through your proximal convoluted tubule, down into your loop of Henle or your nephron loop, back into your distal convoluted tubule, and then finally out through your collecting duct for urine to be collected at the calyces. Okay, and so this is how urine is produced. So there's three parts to this. The first is glomerular filtration, the second is tubular reabsorption, and the last is tubular secretion. And so this is your process. The first part, glomerular filtration, occurs in the renal corpuscle, which is in the cortex of the kidney. You have your glomerulus, which is full of capillary loops. This is fed by an afferent arteriole and then drained by an efferent arteriole. And that's just the blood coming in and blood going out. Within this, we have what's called Bowman's capsule. We have your glomerular capsule. This is a double-walled cup lined by simple squamous epithelium. And then in between these two walls is this capsular space or Bowman's space. This is where that fluid is pulled to. So blood comes through here, and water is pulled to the outside. Water and fluids are pulled to the outside. This is that capsular space, which pulls the filtrate out, which eventually will become your urine. Okay, filtration happens as blood flows through the capillaries. Again, primarily water and dissolved molecules pass into your capsular space. Your large proteins, your red blood cells, and elements do not cross. They stay within the blood. We looked at that on a previous slide. Okay, so blood comes in, blood goes out. Your filtrate gets pulled into this capsular space and eventually becomes your urine. Okay, next we have tubular reabsorption. So after your fluid passes from the capsule into the renal tubule, we have this reabsorption happening. So your proximal convoluted tubule is this PCT here, which is just a tube that's twisted around. So fluid goes through there, then through your loop of Henle or your nephron loop, then your distal convoluted tubule, so your DCT up here, and finally into your collecting tubules and collecting ducts, and then your papillary duct, which is just looking at, so each papilla is kind of the apex of the pyramid, and so there's roughly 30 ducts per papilla, so a lot of places where we can reabsorb things. Both of your convoluted tubules are made of cuboidal epithelium, which doesn't, for this course, not super important, but what that means is that it doesn't allow water to pass in or out. But it does allow these solutes or these ions to be taken from the filtrate. So that's what happens in your convoluted tubules, is those solutes and ions get pulled. When the filtrate goes into this loop of Henle, it's made of simple squamous epithelium, which means that water can pass in and out. And that's where most of the water is taken back by the body. So water and solutes are returned to bloodstream in this loop of Henle. That's the really important piece there. Okay, so we have a lot of salts coming and going in the proximal convoluted tubule. When we get down here, primarily water going out and urea coming in. Once you get to this side, we're then losing our ions, our solutes. Anything that's in blue is being reabsorbed by the body. Anything in red is being secreted by the body and put back into the filtrate. Okay, and so this goes down into your collecting ducts where tubular secretion happens. So your filtrate and urine removes excess water depending on concentrations within the body. And that's what's happening here. So again, your body's taking back as much water as it needs along with urea. It's taking away those solutes, those ions, and it's forming urine. So here's your questions. What is the function unit of a kidney? 3 steps in urine production. Make sure you can identify the different steps here. What happens in the filtration process? Where does this happen at? So where does this take place? What happens during tubular reabsorption? Where does this take place? And what is tubular secretion? And what is that? What determines what we secrete, what we retain? And then last but not least, why are the kidneys important? What do they do that makes them really important for our bodies? This has been urine production. Next, we'll look at urine composition. But until then, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you again. If you have questions, send me an email. Come and talk to me. We'll get things hammered out. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time.